After weeks of disagreements, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association and Dangote Refinery finally agreed with the intervention of the federal government. Pengassan, which represents oil workers, suspended its industrial action after talks with government officials and the management of the Dangote refinery, but warned that the suspension is only temporary. The strike, which began on Sunday after over alleged anti-union practices at the refinery, paralyzed parts of Nigeria's oil and gas operations before Wednesday's truce. The union had accused the refinery of dismissing hundreds of workers for becoming union members, but the company denied the claims, saying only a few were fired for acts of sabotage. Nigeria's Ministry of Labour reminded both sides that unionization is a fundamental right. Pengassan had threatened to block the delivery of crude and gas to the Dangote refinery, a move the company contested in court. Joining us on the show to discuss the truce brokered by the federal government between Pengassan and Dangote is Senator Adams Oshiomole, senator representing Edo North Senatorial District. Good morning, Comrade Adams. Comrade Senator Adams Oshiomole, you're most welcome to the morning show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You have the history, actually, for being our first, in-studio guest on the morning show in a brand new studio.
Yes, actually.
Wow. So, congratulations.
Congratulations.
I hope I get bonus for that. We work as well.
Comrade.
Well, they're really paying you.
It's very good to see you.
Thank you.
The last time I read from you, you said if you saw Ruben Abati, there would be a boxing match.
Yes. Outside the studio.
But it's good to see you laughing and dancing. This subject that we're discussing with you, it's about labor. I recall many years back, I wrote a piece titled Oshiomole, the People's President. You used to fight this same kind of battle that Pengassan is fighting against Abacha, against President Obasanjo. Now, what do you think of this conflict between Pengassan, that has now suspended its strike, and Dangote Refinery, and the implications for labor union rights and also Nigeria's drive towards industrialization?
Well, thank you very much. This is a very complex issue on a good day. I won't want to discuss it, my honest opinion in public, because what can easily be misunderstood. This is my life. I am a labor man from the age of 18 up to becoming president of the NLC. I believe that it is not even constitutional right. It is a God-given right for human beings to associate in pursuance of their common interests as defined by them. These are hard core values I subscribe to, and they also were guaranteed in the Nigeria Constitution under Section 40. I have to be careful because I know you quote law most of the time. The other is the trade union right recognizes, the trade union law recognizes the right of an employee to belong to a union. And we did battle over many years whether it should be your right to contract in or you contract out. Because the problem with the freedom of association is that it also includes the freedom to refuse to associate with a particular association, which is the way you balance it. Otherwise, it becomes something obligatory that you cannot contract out from. So the employer has his right, the employee has his right. I do not have all the details, and when you have arguments such as this, which is not traced to me, why an employee is relieved of his duty and why union believed the process was unfair or unjust, because union business is basically based on fairness, as defined by them. But what I'm not sure is right is the ease with which Pengassan resorted to escalating the matter to a secondary level, what you call the secondary solidarity, to a point of shutting down the oil sector. I think that in seeking to protect a particular set of workers, you do not then risk the job of several other workers. Now, how you draw the balance means, I'll give an example, sir. We had a big battle with the Union Bank of Nigeria, where they decided that if a husband and wife are working in Union Bank, even if one is in Maduguri, the other one is illegal, why should go? I think Mr. Loge was the MD of Union Bank then. And I said this was anti-family policy. When I say, and I'm in the NSC, we took that resolution at a convention. We wrote a letter to the management to it as a secondary organization. And they didn't take us serious. We had to find ways and means of shutting down the first bank. But we didn't have to shut down all the banks, even though we had the capacity, obviously, so to do. Because we recognize that the sin of, the alleged sin of First Bank cannot be said to apply to others, except if those other people cooperate to us, then we know what to do. Now I saw people came to me to say, we are not at work today, those working in the oil industry. What's happening? Oh, there's a problem in Dangote. Oh. And then I started witnessing long queues, etc., etc. Reason, Pengassan has decided that NNPC be shut down. Several other companies shut down. I'm like, no, you don't rush because of this sensitivity. You know, in pursuing war, you have to recognize that the tools you deploy must be such that they do not undermine other people's jobs, which should be, of course, signed to the trade unions as well. Yeah. For example, those people selling tomatoes who can't get fuel to buy because there is a quarrel between one Dangote refinery as a company and one union called Pengassan. Those are things I thought that Pengassan ought to take into account and pursue this principle. Secondly, this is the last point I will make. When you are dealing with a private sector employer, I come from the private sector background. In the trade union movement, you have those in the public sector and those in the private sector. In the private sector, when a new company is coming in, we allow them deliberately, just the way in which government grants grant tax holidays to encourage an employer to come in or an investor to come in. We also allow companies a certain number of years to consolidate and then begin to make money. Then at that point, you can now organize. And then the company is in a position to, you know, I know that Dangote was commissioned just before President Buhari left office, but it commenced production several months after. So basically about a year and a half. Given the size of the business and all the controversies and even issues arising from where you get your crude, whether NNPC says to you, whether IOCs can send the crude overseas and then you pay a premium before you can get it, all of those issues are still being dealt with. Even as a senior, we try to intervene in all of that. I thought that Pengassan should recognize that an employer has to exist, mature, be strong enough to guarantee good paying jobs.
All right. Thank you so much. I think you've made very important points, and expectedly so. I'd often talked about the importance of labor unions because following this, conflict between Pengassan, Ndupeng, and Dangote refinery, a number of people have even questioned the importance or relevance of labor unions in Nigeria. Now, I put a question forward to Mr. Esele as to how can we strengthen unions so that they are restored to the glory days. Off air, we're just talking about during your time, you were able to have, bring out meaningful outcomes from your interactions with government. But now all we see is just interactions, only a few people benefit, and the people are not really well represented in terms of their welfare. What are they doing wrong? Because we cannot, I don't think we should do without labor unions, but it seems as if sometimes they're overreaching, sometimes it looks like they're not representing the interests of the people they're supposed to be.
Thank you. I also think that there's something that is missing, the role of the government, of the Ministry of Labor. If you look at the labor laws, there is enough room for the Ministry of Labor to ensure that the process and procedures are observed before you evoke that weapon. But oftentimes, this is lost. For example, at what point can you involve people who are not directly involved in a conflict? All of this is where they are covered for. Obviously, no country, in my view, and studies have shown that where you have unions, the country are not necessarily less profitable than where you don't have unions. So trade unions is not an obstacle to profit-making. Indeed, many sociologists have argued that when people have the right to associate and ventilate their feelings and have a channel to negotiate with employer and have what seems to be an agreement, not just an imposition, there is a greater sense of belonging and therefore a more positive attitude to work, resulting in better productivity. There are many things that I'm personally disappointed about. For example, what is going on in many of the private sector, like the banking sector, it shocks me that as we speak, about 60% or more of bank employees are contract staff.
Yes, very true.
What it means that these employees who dress well as if they are bankers, when they are thrown out, they have no gratuity. They are contract staff. They are not employees of the bank. The bank, in my view, illegally and immorally, I emphasize morality because law can't cover everything. You know, they set up a secondary employment agency. They also become a private sector employer. They use that vehicle to recruit and then deploy to their bank, invoice a certain amount of money, for example, $500,000 naira in the name of Oshiomole as a worker of Bank X, and then the labor contractor is paid 500 naira. He told pay me 200, and the labor employer pocketed 300. I will find out who is this labor employer. Is the same owners and directors and shareholders or associates of the bank. Those, for me, are practices that must be stopped. Yeah. You know, and the worst is that before I left the NLC, we organized and we compelled at least 2-3 banks, I wouldn't want to mention their name, to order or allow union to exist, or we have to do what we have to do. And when they could do escape, they accepted. But what I found out later is that they just pay what I call protection fee. Every month, they issue a check to the unions, but the union don't really exist. They don't have negotiating rights, because if they do exist, they could allow 80%, 70% of their employees to be contract staff. Absolutely. And so I said to them, the last time I had a conversation with the NLC president, this is protection fee, there's no union. Okay. Because the bank do whatever they want. Okay. There are several others. Now you have state governors who insist, and as we speak, are not paying the minimum wage. Okay. I can't live with that. Okay. Okay. So there are a couple of things the union must do. You need them. But union must be able to carry out the proper to say at which point do we do what. And if we take this line of action, who will be affected? There's also the fact that the workers spend only 8 hours at work. The remaining 16 hours is outside the workplace. Okay. I'd like to ask you this. The internal mechanics of the union, there's also been some actors in the union that have, pulled the union to themselves, and other interests and voices are not being heard in the union. There's also the conversation about talents. Who is even the head of the union? Because you stated something just now, that in your time, you will not go for the jugular, like pulling everything down and calling for that strike that will ground the energy sector, which is a national security risk. But this union did it. They did it. So it speaks to talent and training. It speaks to the fact that some persons feel that they are the union itself and they've pulled the union to themselves, which was not the case in your time. There was flourishing of ideas. Before you became president, you were, secretary to somebody over the years and you learned through the rope. But today we don't see that again. In fact, we have people that are heading 2 unions at the same time. Yeah.
Like Festus Osifo, he's head of TUC. He's also president of Pengassan.
Yeah, again, it depends on their roles. In the NLC, as president of the NLC, I had to resign my position as general secretary of the Textile Workers Union. So I am not sure of the status of Osifo. I don't think he's a full-time president of his union. I don't think this is really at the heart of it. It depends on their constitution and relevant sections of the Labor Act, of the Trade Union Act. But I have some difficulties.
I know, as a former union man. Yes, you don't want to be saying castigating union.
Voice for the strength
of the union.
Yeah, but there are a couple of things that, there are the do's and the don'ts. We know. I keep saying that those national strikes that we organized, and I led them, and I put everything to it, the issues in quotation were issues that will affect every Nigerian. And therefore, there is already merit in asking every Nigerian to back those actions and taking every means possible to ensure that as much as possible people comply, to a point that on the street of Lagos, people are playing football, which means people bought into the issue, and we have put them across to the public. We have argued them with government. Then we didn't even have these so many alternative media, which was also a challenge. But even within the small space NTA provide, we are able to prove that this is why we have to do what we are doing and show how far we've gone before we got to this point. You know, so I think there is a huge gap in terms of the capacity to mobilize. I also suspect, I don't have any proof, but my experience is that before you shut the gates of NNPC, there has to be a fight. So when I saw NNPC gate effortlessly closed, all the other companies, government-owned oil companies, without any effort, closed, I'm like, if these were private employers, would they allow their company to close without any resistance and they roll out their wages at the end of the month? I do not think so. So why is everybody seemingly so helpless that we are at the mercy of anyone? You can show that the economy, and we are told we are lost 30%, gas reduction has been reduced, and so on and so forth. There are laws regulating this. Before you take those measures, you are ready for a fight, right? And the workers, for them to follow, must see the linkage between their well-being and what is at stake. Not workers coming to work and, oh, today there's no work, we have a problem. I really think that, in terms of this particular issue, so that we do not go too far out of it, I really think that Dangote refinery has faced too many pressure points that I won't begin to wonder. I mean, when people say Dangote is a monopolist, I'm like, would you prefer a monopoly that creates jobs in Nigeria than an importing monopoly, which NNPC became? And my disagreement with the unions in the oil sector is that we were with Peter Osifo. No, not Osifo.
Esele.
When NNPC was privatized by President Obasanjo, so at a point you have to start cutting your losses. It made sense to sell them as scraps. And the good news is whoever buys them, we put them to work. Now, this was revised by government. Why? NNPC promised they will put these refineries back to work within 6 months. And I'm on record, if you ask Alhaji Dangote, you ask the Imo Governor Soludo. I asked the former, now late, Minister of Petroleum, the guy from Zaria, Rilwan Lukman. I said, what has happened to your promise? You asked for 500 million, you've collected over $2-3 billion. The refineries are dead. Now, I saw Osifo talking about the good pay in the oil sector. Very well. That has to do with the fact that they are privileged to manage that sector for a natural endowment. Everybody knows that the oil is God-given. And those who process it make huge money. And so if they pay good wages, that is very encouraging. But how much is the wage sector? I mean, what is the wage level of those refineries that are not working? Of the worker? Because here we're talking about refining sector, not those operating in the downstream who are doing extraction. So I believe there can be no question in my mind as to the right, inalienable right of people to be involved in unions, but we must also not kill employers. Now, I have never heard any statement or any attempt to condemn the management of NNPC and the agencies for mismanaging resources with regards to the huge outlay in the name of refining Kaduna Refinery, Warri Refinery, and Port Harcourt Refinery. Ministers after ministers give themselves deadline, which they never kept. And I expect, as a matter of now, patriotism, I will expect the union to say, you are risking our jobs, and an NNPC manager was on record as saying that. They have to keep reporting.
Thank
you are reporting, and you are keeping your job. And there is argument as to what these are associated with this. Importing Russian oil of lower quality. You are importing diesel of lower quality in the name of competing with local production. What I know everywhere in the world is that unions support industrial policies that encourage local investors. When they have relocated here, and they have started producing, then we can go and organize their workers.
Okay, Senator Comrade Adams Oshiomole, thank you very much for joining us. On a lighter note, before you go, I'm used to seeing you either in that revolutionary khaki or in a black suit. But now, this is another look. Maybe one of these days I'll do a piece on the sartorial statements of Senator Comrade Adams Oshiomole.
Your observation is correct. I had challenges last night because I came to Lagos for one informal outing. I'm actually wearing no shoes. And I didn't imagine that I was going to be here, but I had a conversation with the chairman and then said, I should be here fine. So I'm like, am I going to wear these pajamas?
This bourgeoisification.
It's not really bourgeoisification. It's not a bourgeois. It's quite affordable. But this is not. Now, this little thing, I need to clear it. Because I watch one analyst say, even Oshiomole, power changes people. He no longer wears khaki. Do you know that I am not allowed, with all my human rights, I'm not allowed, I don't have the right to wear those khaki to the Senate.
Really? They have a dress code there?
Because they have a dress code. Okay. And I have seen, I was there for 1, 2, 3, a couple of times. They warned me, please, this is not labor office. Okay. By the time they walk out, a senator who was well-dressed like you,
okay,
but
that's discriminatory.
I knew that I had to...
No, it's a violation of your right under Section 42 of the 1999 Constitution.
But I have to go to court to enforce that right. If they won't pay out.
Anyway, thank you very much, Senator Comrade Adams Oshiomole.